Hello, how are you? Today, Andrea Bustamante and I, Sebastián Cisneros, we are going to talk about stereotypes and prejudices about Peru. So let's start with the stereotypes about Peru. In Peru, there are many stereotypes. For example, there is just jungle and mountains as if everything was like Machu Picchu. This was really interesting to hear in any interview that I watched. But also here in Peru, we have some metropolis. Like as you can see in this image, we actually have a metropolis. But I want to say that yes, of course, we have some places like Machu Picchu here in Peru. That also exist until now. Other stereotype that I hear about Peru is that we all have a llama like a pet. It was really interesting to hear because actually here in Peru it's illegal to have a llama like a pet. Also, I hear that people think that we use the llamas like transportation. It was really funny because here in Peru the llamas are in captivity. It's unusual to have a llama, as I said. Now, another stereotype is that people think that we are all from the farm and we are not industrialized like a country, of course. And as I show you in the first stereotype, we are a metropolis country, and we also have a good commerce with Japan. But I want to say that yes, of course, it exists in Peru, but it's not really common like in all of Peru. In the last one is that when they hear the word Peru, they think in Incas, llamas, tunics, and ancient civilization. This is really interesting because in all the programs in all the programs that mention the country Peru, they always shows mountains, they shows Machu Picchu, they shows llamas, they shows tunics, they shows our ancient civilization. I'm not saying that this is not good. Actually, this is perfect because all of Peru, all the Peruvian people, it's grateful about his culture. And here, for example, when we appear in the TV program The Simpsons, you can see that they only mention all that I said: mountains, tunics, Machu Picchu, and llamas. And actually, this is really funny and interesting. Now, my partner Andrea is going to talk about more of prejudice.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrea Bustamante and I'm going to continue with this presentation. In this slide, I'm going to talk about the changes in the stereotypes and prejudices from one generation to another. In the baby boomers generation, we have a sense of paternalistic culture, a defined family focus, defined gender roles between men and women, a conservative perspective, and nationalism. This changed with the next generation, with its X generation, which is more education oriented, which means they are interested to get degrees in the different types of education. They are interested in equality, which this shows with the presence of women in the workforce and in different areas. They are more flexible and way more independent. And the next generation, which is the one that I belong to, it's the millennials. We are self-oriented, which means that we are really far away from the family focus that baby boomers had. Then we are more open-minded. We are global, coming from globalization, which means we know that we are interconnected with different cultures, and we are empathic with animals and people. In this slide, I'm going to talk about the different cultural groups within my society and the way people perceive them. So I enlisted 2 characteristics for each group, one positive and one negative. The first group is Andean people. Andean people are always related to being uneducated, and this is because there are are a lot of bad representation of them in the media, to the point that it has been so normalized to ridicule them. Fortunately, nowadays in my society, people are reporting this kind of representation as offensive, so we're evolving there. The next characteristic is a positive one, which they are related to being hard workers. They are always showing in their own businesses and in their own jobs the quality of their work and the effort they put in it. The next group is Afro-Peruanos. That means they are African Peruvian. The negative characteristic that they are related to is that they are unpolished or unclean. These have been shown in also a lot of representation in the media and have, of course, a racist tone to it. The good characteristic is that they are related to being good entertainers. They have a lot of music and cultural representations such as dance, singing, and playing instruments. The last one is the limeños, which means they are people from the capital. They are related to being corrupted, that they don't always follow the rules, and they try to take as much advantage out of it. And the other characteristic is that they are also related to being entrepreneurs. They have lots of businesses, and we have seen a lot of successful stories of people who have come from really small businesses to huge brands and nowadays in our country. So in this last slide, I'm going to talk about stereotypes and prejudices of gender, age, and wealth in my society. Regarding gender, finally, in this last slide, we're going to talk about stereotypes and prejudices of gender, age, and wealth in my society. Regarding age, we have the global misconception that old people are conservative, that young people are unexperienced and naive, and that new generations and old generations cannot get along. Respecting gender, it's basically centered in gender roles. Since my society it's mostly conservative, they have a very defined type of women and men, which they are leaning to the traditional ideas of women being feminine and fragile, and men exuding masculinity and being tough. Classism is really marked. Finally, regarding wealth, it's basically centered in classism.
Thank you so much for being here and have a good night.